Hello, everyone. My name is 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐢𝐿, and today on Growing Women's Wrestling Episode 2, we have three more superstars, and they're going to tell you a little bit about their life and how they got into wrestling, and then we will begin the Q&A session. First, we will have Allie.
Hi, I'm Allie Sprenger, formerly Allie Bernard, competed at Beijing and London Olympics. Super excited to be here, got into wrestling. My brother was a wrestler, and I wanted to get some trophies.
Next, we have Toccara Montgomery.
Hello, I'm Toccara Montgomery, 2004 Olympian, two-time silver medalist at the World Championships. And I got into wrestling, just basically wanted to try something new and challenging and kind of stuck with it. From then, it was very addicting.
Our final person is Leigh Jaynes.
Okay. By the way, hi guys. I haven't seen you in a long time, and I'm the smallest on the totem pole. So I'm a 3-time world team member, and I'm a world bronze medalist. I'm also the head coach of Delaware Valley University women's wrestling team. So it's our first season. I started wrestling as a dare. Nobody in my family wrestles, not even close. I thought it was a good, challenging sport. It kind of resembled my life at the time. So I continued, and there were a lot of opportunities that I was able to pursue along the way. So that's pretty much it. I started wrestling at 18.
That's amazing. We'll touch on that a little bit later. First question is actually going to be for Allie. What was your Olympic and or world championship experience like? Did you make 2 Olympic teams or 1? I thought you.
Technicalities here. I competed in 2 Olympics.
Okay.
I would say an emotional roller coaster. I mean, there's stressful times. I didn't come home with a medal, so it's awesome to be a part of it. It was a letdown. I didn't medal, but I mean, looking back, hindsight, I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. So it was a really great experience, but at the same time, a lot of emotions throughout it.
Okay. This question is for Leigh. What's the difference from when you wrestled in college to now?
There are more colleges. I mean, when I started wrestling in college, I think Toccara and I are kind of around the same time. There was 5 colleges out there to choose from. And, now there's over 40. So I think just opportunity. We also didn't really have a structured division or a WCWA governing body. Now we're looking towards NCAA, national championships. And so the growth has, I think it's at least tenfold by now. I think it was tenfold like 4 years ago, and it's only grown from there. So opportunity.
I'll add to that because I coached throughout all of your careers while you were on the college scene and beyond. To your point, Leigh, I think there was just another one named today. I think it's 82 or 83.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I was trying to underestimate a little bit. So that's, gross underestimation of how many are, from 5 to 80. That's insane.
And I think the other, to add to that too, is there's NAIA programs, junior college programs, and there are NCAA type of programs. Their championships is called something else, WCWC, I think, until they get, I forget the number, but I think it's like at least 35, and then they will
NCAA, something like that.
An emerging sport when that would lead them to become a NCAA sport. So
Correct,
their championships isn't called the NCAA right now, but there are NCAA schools that have women's wrestling. Toccara, this question is for you. What was it like to coach a college team? I know you are a teacher now, but at one time you were a college coach. What was it like to be a college coach?
It was humbling, to say the least. Challenging oftentimes. It's something completely different to be a competitor and be solely responsible for yourself and the outcome of just your matches, your weight management, but to be put in charge of some 30 plus girls and to make sure you're on top of not only like their wrestling, but also their academics, their nutrition. And, you don't want to delve too much in their personal lives, but you kind of have to get them to focus on being able to balance and be an all around athlete. So it was a learning opportunity that I welcomed and, something that I would think about doing again in the future.
To follow up to that question, because, and this happens frequently with coaches, a lot of times student athletes wind up to become coaches, and I put you in a different category, you and Allie, and all 3 of you actually, because you made world championship teams and Olympic teams. So coming from the Olympic perspective and then going back and coaching women's college wrestling, what was the difference between how you kind of embraced your career and then when you turned it over to the student athletes on a college team? Was there any difference at all, or did some of them have the same goals and dreams that you had, or did you notice any difference at all?
I would say the big difference for me coaching, coming off of like an Olympic team and then going into coaching, were expectations. Everyone's expectations are a little bit different. Everyone doesn't have the goal of being an Olympian. So you have to kind of adapt your coaching style, your practices, your technique to meet style levels of everyone. And I'm like, there are some girls who just wanted to be a part of a college team. They wanted to experience the college atmosphere and life and be a part of a program, because many came from programs that didn't have a sanctioned women's wrestling program in high school. So to be a part of that in college was a big deal to them. And that was an accomplishment in and of itself. And then there were others who had the potential to be Olympians or world team members that you had to kind of build that confidence in them. When you're surrounded by athletes at the OTC, I think everyone has that confidence. That's the goal. So it was just kind of figuring out everyone's goals and creating like a roadmap ultimately that could best benefit all the girls on the team.
Okay, this next question is for Leigh. Given the fact that many states will sanction folk style wrestling, or they have sanctioned folk style wrestling, what will it take for college coaches to help close the gap to Japan? In other words, when the girls are wrestling in high school, it's all folk style, and then when they go to college, it's freestyle. How are you going to help, and what will it take for us to close the gap to Japan? Japan's won, like, I think 23 out of the last 30 world championships.
Yeah, I think have we not been? I mean, if we've really been watching, I think we are closing the gap on Japan. I think we're moving forward slowly and we're not going back. I see, adding Clarissa Chun and adding some of the women that came out of the Olympic Training Center program, and leadership as yourself too. I mean, you have experience and you have a contribution to the wrestling community as well, as we all do. I think, I think Clarissa Chun is key. I think she was able to infiltrate enough of the Japanese culture that she was able to pass some of that principle down to the U.S. girls and help Helen achieve what she's achieved, and then that gives the rest of the team confidence. If one person's able to take down a legend, then a lot of times people feel that inspired they can do the same thing too. So I see our team going that direction. I don't think we're going to be behind for long. As far as that was a two-part question, so I missed.
I basically was wanting to know what will it take for us to catch Japan's, being that most of the high school wrestlers are coming in, because on episode one of the college coaches was saying about half of her team, she'd been to 2 or 3 different teams as a college coach, and 40 to 50% of her team had never even done freestyle when they entered college. Yeah,
I think when they're talking about sanctioning and when leadership is talking about pushing those things forward, we're looking for the easiest way for them to say yes. If we say, okay, we're just going to be adding, women's wrestling and it's the same style, and if we're short on coaches, this coach knows that style, and we're trying to get our foot in the door in this country, and I think it's paying off. I mean, mat time is mat time. It does take a little bit to learn folk style versus freestyle. Some people take to one style or another right away. I personally, when I first started freestyle, I was great at it. I won the national championship in freestyle and then went 2 and out in folk style in the same tournament, series, so I don't really look at it as a disadvantage. There's a lot of things about folk style that are advantageous that, we're able to work on our opponents in other countries that they're not really familiar with. Our scrambling and our conditioning and our ability to control people to the mat. I think if we look at those strengths and then we start really taking a look at where we're running short, maybe our angles, maybe our overreacting, maybe just getting a little bit sharper in our attacks and our follow through. And I think we're on track to do to take over the world. I mean, I really truly believe that. I think we're going the right direction.
Fabulous. Ali, this question is for you. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing female wrestling?
I can speak kind of for my area specifically. I think state to state, we look at different challenges. Just becoming more involved in Minnesota wrestling, just seeing the numbers, we continue to grow those, but just from like a diversity and inclusion standpoint with women in leadership, in coaching, those young women need to see those women in those positions and to continue the cycle. So being in those positions, I think is really going to help. I don't think it's maybe the biggest, but it is one of the obstacles that we're kind of working on here.
Okay, Toccara, this question is for you. Why do you believe many states have not sanctioned high school girls wrestling?
I don't know. I feel like there's so many possible reasons, and it may vary state to state. I think ultimately it may be just the stigma of women's wrestling. I still can't tell you how many times I would tell someone I wrestle, and it's kind of like one of those side jokes, or like they don't think like Olympic style wrestling per se. And then I think a lot of people are just kind of nervous, like, how do we go about it? They don't really have the infrastructure in place. Like they really feel like it's something completely different from what they're doing with their men's program. So they're somewhat concerned that they just don't know how to make it work, how to put it together.
You said something that kind of, I guess I wasn't really thinking about this, but do you think it makes a difference from freestyle to folk style? I mean, if let's say it stays the way it is, kind of to Leigh's point, is that going to make a difference in the long run if they want to be a collegiate wrestler? Does it matter, in fact, if they have any experience at all? Before they get to college and wrestle, does that matter? Obviously, they need to have wrestling experience, but does it matter if they have folk style, freestyle experience?
For me personally, recruiting, it was never an issue. I think the fundamentals of wrestling will carry over in any style. And you just kind of work from there and build a base and kind of focus on some of those core elements that make folk style different from freestyle and vice versa, and just kind of narrow it in for those girls that don't have any experience, and for them to kind of gain experience kind of on a fast pace. But I don't think that, like, I've never stopped recruiting an athlete because they didn't have freestyle experience.
Okay. Allie, I forgot to ask you this, because I know that you wrestled in Canada. What was it like to wrestle in college in Canada, and why did you choose to go up north?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was awesome, to be honest. At the time, man, it's a while back now, probably like 10 years. The stigma, as Toccara mentioned, it wasn't there. I remember going there for my recruiting trip, and I went to dinner there, and they're like, hey, what brings you here? And I'm like, oh, wrestling. They're like, oh yeah, I used to wrestle in high school. And my jaw like dropped. Like, it's the norm. It's fine. Like, no one blinks an eyelash around it. Like, I felt like I could be me and be who I wanted to be, and I could still wrestle, and no one was there to say, oh, you have to have short hair, or you have to do X, Y, and Z to fit in. Or it was very inclusive, and their women's program at the time, they had it right alongside the men's program. So we got to compete in the same tournament structure. So it was CIS at the time, which was really great. And we were definitely treated as equals. I know we're getting to that point now in the US, but at that time when I had graduated, it just wasn't there yet, that structure for women's wrestling.
That's interesting, because I sort of asked Toccara this, and I'll ask you the same thing. Then you said, it sounded like you said there wasn't as much as a stigma there. Why do you think there isn't as much as a stigma there for women's wrestling as there is in the US? We're bordering nations, almost similar in terms of culture, but it may be a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know their sport structure to women in sports. They're right next to the men's program across the board within the Canada sports system. So I'm not sure the magic formula. I wish I did know. I would wish we could implement it here as well. But I don't know.
Someone said something earlier, and I don't know if it was Toccara or maybe it was you, Allie. In Hawaii, Danny DeAndes said it was a similar kind of thing where there maybe it was both of you. There wasn't so much of a stigma there because so many high school girls actually do judo there. So in Hawaii, it was just like a natural transition, and maybe that's part of it. And in many of these other states, Toccara, maybe like you alluded to, it is such a unique sport for boys too. I mean, we don't even have any other sports in the states where you actually weigh in outside of high school. Then you have all the martial arts and mixed martial arts and like that. But in high school, that's the only sport we actually have like a weigh-in sport. But in, back to what I was saying, in Hawaii, it's like they picked it up right away. And then I think it was Texas, and then I think it was California. And at this point right now, I think it's 22 states have, yeah, I think it's 22 states have girls wrestling. I'm actually in Illinois, and I'm really, you know, I think Leigh, you said something earlier, I'm really pushing to try to get it sanctioned here. So much so now, and this is news maybe for you guys, I'm actually going to be the women's wrestling recruiting coordinator. It's like a long title, at Lincoln College in Illinois. But the whole idea is to try to keep pushing the state. Because I asked someone this, in our state, they keep saying, well, you don't have the numbers, you don't have the numbers, you don't have the numbers. I'm just like, well, we're not going to have the numbers unless you give us the opportunity. And if and when we get the opportunity, like I've seen in many other states, man, it doubles and triples in like a year or two. I think in Illinois right now.
That's what happened in Missouri. We didn't necessarily have the numbers, but it was something that they were just really pushing for, and they're really, really adamant about getting it going. And then we finally got it sanctioned, like triple what we started the year before. And it just grew exponentially. And I think that you have to give them the opportunity. You know, it's like that old mantra from one of those movies, like if you build it, they'll come. And I think that's kind of what we need for women's wrestling. Like if we put it in place, we'll get those girls out on the teams, you know, just out of curiosity alone. And it's just one of those sports, like I said earlier, where it's so addicting. Once we get them in the door, they're there, you know, like it's just something very alluring about wrestling that keeps people active and involved and want to be a part of it.
Leigh, your thing is on mute there. Does anyone have anything else to say?
I muted it because I have a lot of activity that goes on.
Yes, we've seen and heard. Anyone have anything else to say, to add to the discussion?
With regards to?
Anything you want to say. Plug your program, say something about wrestling, add to the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to plug my program. Why not? You know, Delaware Valley, it's our first year. We're in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. If you're looking for something that is good in the animal sciences, I'm picking out strong points about our program that are unlike other programs. We have veterinary, small pet science, and very strong in the biology department, as well as agricultural department. We do not have nursing, unfortunately, or engineering. However, we do usually have anything else that somebody might be looking for. So DelawareValley.edu is our website. My email is Leigh, 𝐿𝐸𝐼GH.Jaynes, .delval.edu if somebody wants to reach out to me. I'm very active on social media if somebody wants to drop a line or a message. Right now, I have 11 girls committed, which is good for our first season, especially during Corona season. Half of my recruiting trips got canceled. Hopefully it's exciting. It was a tough start for this program, but they've been able to stick to it, and we're able to make the commitment and put the money where their mouth is to bring in somebody full time to make it happen. So Doylestown, Pennsylvania is a really beautiful town. It's a suburb of Philadelphia. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. If there's anything else, I own a small business. I make women's wrestling apparel. What else? I can plug anything. I can plug.
I'll plug myself here as well. I have 2 IG channels. One of them is Women Wrestle Too. The other one is at Coach Shannon Talks, or at Women Wrestle Too and at Coach Shannon Talks. And most of these videos will be put on there, and I'll put them in other formats as well. Ladies, thank you for participating in Growing Women's Wrestling Episode 2.